that's what BevLive, I think, is all about. It's like, finding those small, cool wineries and then have them, sell the wines directly to the public. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
You want to put some in a glass?
Heck yeah. Do I want to put some in a glass? Come on.
We got a good sound going here.
There we go. Ooh. So what's the best way to taste it, to smell it, to maybe those who are uninitiated into the world?
Shout out to Gary Vaynerchuk here. I mean, he hosted the Royal.
Gary V
in the house. Well, I wish he was. So Gary, if you watch this, shout out, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, you give it a sniffy sniff, as Gary V says.
Yeah. Okay.
You got lots of fruit. We're not going to go into any detail. We're not that, this whole thing is, we're not like wine snobs or anything. I think the whole thing is just about for everybody to enjoy wine. And it's more about, what you like, not necessarily knowing every tiny little bit about each wine. So.
Yeah. I don't think you could know it all. I feel like so much out there. Everything's changing. It's really hard to keep up with.
I think also for the consumers out there, just, try to find people that you trust. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to build at BevLive. So that's the cool thing. It's like we're going to have some really, really cool winemakers on the platform, and they can kind of like break it down for everybody.
Yeah, me especially. I know I'll need the help.
All right. Not too shabby.
So what are we looking for how do we taste it to get, people read, it has notes of grape, not grape, obviously, but whatever fruit, whatever, Hey, I'm not the wine expert.
That's a fantastic, we were just going to go with that.
I'm trying to read the bottle to see what they say, but sometimes it's like something crazy, the notes of tobacco and leather, and I'm like, I don't know if I can taste that.
I really don't think that's absolutely necessary for most people. I think it's really just about, for me, it's about a wine having good structure, good acid, good tannins, and kind of like the fruit working together, but not necessarily about each wine having a specific flavor.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what makes a good wine. It's just, a good structure. And what does structure mean? It's just like, when you drink it, when it just all kind of comes together.
Yeah, this is amazing. But Tempranillo, that's kind of like a sort of a Spanish, what I would call like a table wine. Like it's just so common over there, and
it's like the main grape. What Cabernet Sauvignon is to the U.S. is what Tempranillo is to Spain, and especially in Ribera del Duero. I mean, you get the bigger wines, you got lots of fruit. So for most Americans, especially those of you who like bigger wines, who like Napa, who like California wines. Yeah. And you want to reach out, not reach out, but want to try something different. I think that's where Ribera del Duero is just absolutely awesome. I mean, it's bigger wines, and let me say it like this: if you want to look for a wine for like a big steak or something,
okay, I'm listening.
This is it.
This is because it's pretty neutral. I feel like it's not too assertive, so it's not going to take over the flavor of the food. And
I mean, it's a rock solid wine.
So Bjorn, for those who might be wondering how we got together, you want to tell that story, or
I think you actually tell it better.
I do.
No, it's actually our daughters. They probably don't want to be named by name here.
Yeah, right.
They would be embarrassed of the embarrassing parents. But our kids were friends, and then we got to know each other and started carpooling. And I had the idea for BevLive, and I knew you were a rock star software engineer, and it's like
it's a tall order. I don't know.
I thought that would be perfect. I got a quick question for our producer, director Carson. Are we all in the picture and everything?
Yeah.
Is everything good?
We're good.
Everything looking good? Just make sure I don't talk for like 20 minutes. Nobody sees me. It's like just making sure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it was. So we started working together, and I think that's like for those small business owners, and I've been a small business owner for a long time, but I can highly recommend, if you are not a technical founder, look for that technical co-founder.
Yeah, so that's interesting too, because you are a bona fide businessman, as I would say, that you run your own company for over a decade at least now. That's what led you, I think, into this transition to, hey, we could do something different. We can really help people. But how different is it to go into tech startup life, right?
It's very different. But I think it's like people talk about the hockey stick kind of in tech, right? I mean, it's to build those companies that can scale. Sure. And I think this is one of those companies that can really transform how wine is being sold, because the problem is that we have in the wine industry, and I always use that example, is that we used to have about 5,000 wine distributors. So the way it works is wineries sell to the distributor, who sell to the retailer, who sell to the consumer. Right. And we used to have about 1,000 California wineries who sell to those distributors. Okay. And now 20 years later, this was 20 years ago, 20 years later, we have about, it's the opposite. We have about 5,000 California wineries and about 1,000, less than 1,000 distributors across the country. So to reach the consumer, to sell to the distributor, to the retailer, to the consumer, it gets much, much harder for the small wineries.
Wow, okay.
And I work with a lot of small wineries like as a consultant. And, I saw a problem, like how do we get in contact with those consumers? Because regular distribution is getting harder and harder. And so that's when I had the idea for BevLive.
Sure, yeah. And I think it was a good one, obviously. I want to be here, right? Yeah. And I get to drink wine, so right. Hey.
You drink on the air.
Yeah. Technical check. We're good, because I can't be a CTO if I don't know what I'm doing.
It's going to be in big trouble if that doesn't work.
I know. That's the fun part about this too, and I think any startup is you have to chart some pretty unknown territory, right? So we've tried to do live streams with people all the way, literally across the world in Australia.
In the vineyard.
And the first one went pretty well, so I was pretty happy until we get to the second one, and I didn't even think about a regional difference maybe, but it was a world of internet difference, that's for sure. And so
one was like not in a major city, but more of a city environment, whereas the other one was more almost like in the outback where they use satellite.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And that was the problem. So, I guess you live and learn,
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's what entrepreneurship is all about. This, what we're trying to figure out with these live streams too is kind of understand what people want to see and what they do not want to see.
Absolutely. So if you're tuning in and you're listening to this and say, hey, I don't know about this, or I'd like to know about this, so let us know, because we'll talk about our personal lives, we'll talk about our kind of adventure into tech startup life, we'll talk about the wines. But what I'd like you to kind of tell, Bjorn, is you taught me a lot about how much money really goes into the marketing and the design of the label versus, and then they'll pass that cost to the consumer, obviously.
Right.
So how much do you think you really need to spend on a good bottle of wine that will impress company? Or
that's a really good question. I mean, you don't need to spend $60 or $70 on a bottle of wine.
Right, yeah, that's my point.
My wife will attest to that. I mean, she gets to taste a lot of good wines that are like $20 or $15. And I think that's kind of, we have some wines on our platform that are like $12.99. They're like, and people who are familiar with the point system, they're like 90-point Cabernet Sauvignons that are just amazing wines for $12.99.
Yeah.
So you do not... Please don't go out there and spend all your money on. And I love Napa, for example. I mean, the wines are fantastic, and they're worth it. But there are other regions that are, very, very enjoyable as well. So you just got to look at your pocketbook and see how much money you have. And want to spend. But you can find solid wines, at like $15 or $20. But if you want something really, really special, there's nothing wrong with Napa, for example. I've just been to Napa. I love it. The wines are fantastic, so it just depends on what you like and what you're looking for.
Got it. Okay. So, someone like me, I don't know a ton about wine, perhaps other than I like to drink it, and so that counts for something. I feel like, but say I have family coming into town. My parents, they're big wine people, as but so they're the type of people they'll go to Italy and spend 2 weeks in a vineyard and learn about the family and, literally go stay in a cottage on their farm. They're coming to visit, I'm feeling pressured to produce something to impress them, hey, what does someone like me do? How do I go to the store to find that perfect bottle?
You don't go to the store, you go to BevLive.
There you go. Why didn't I think of that? Free shipping to California too while you're at it.
Yeah. No, I think like I said, it's about these relationships, and I think that if wines are distributed through the regular distribution channels, and if you go and they end up in your local retailer, that's fantastic. I think the best thing that you can do is create relationships with those retailers. There are people here in town where we live, where you walk in, they know you by name, and they know it's like hey, hey Brett, I know you liked this wine last week. Here's another one. So I think it's about creating those relationships with the retailers. And then again, coming back to BevLive, it's the same thing, is creating those relationships with us, with the winemakers there, because that gives you an opportunity to have that communication directly with the wineries and ask questions. So either way, it's fine. I think I'm a big fan of locally owned wine stores.
Right.
They are fantastic, and I hope they will be around for a very long time. But then there are also other business models, I think, like BevLive, where that are changing the landscape a little bit and giving people the opportunity to buy those wines. And with BevLive too, it's a marketplace. So it's the first time. We're the first.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell about that and how we're so unique in that way. Yes. I don't think people realize the legal, red tape surrounding it all.
It is very difficult, and the marketplace setting is new to what we're doing, because up until now, most of these wineries have their information of the wines on their website. People go there, and then they can buy the wines. Wow. The problem there is, though, that, with shipping being not cheap, you got to buy a decent amount, like 6 bottles or something, from those wineries, and it's the same winery, which is fine. But in a marketplace setting like we have, you can kind of mix and match. So almost like your small wine store. So you asked before how much you want to spend on a bottle of wine. You can put that $30 or $40 in there, but you don't need to buy a whole case of it. You do 2 of those, and then you do 3 of these, and kind of mix and match. And I think that's what for the consumer makes this so super interesting, that you can put it all together, ship it all together, and at the same time you can communicate directly with the wineries, ask questions. And I think that's what makes it unique, because people may be asking, so what's the difference between this marketplace and a normal retailer? Exactly.
Or if I go on wine.com, how are you different?
Exactly. So there's several online marketplaces.
Sure.
I think for us it's we are just a little bit more, because you indirectly buying directly from the winery. So for those winery friends of us listening,
absolutely,
we have a clearing retailer. So we have to stay the word 3-tier system. We have a clearing retailer in California who basically purchases the product from you, who then sends them out. And for and that's probably about as close as you can get to a marketplace direct to consumer situation, especially for international wineries, because those international wineries, it gets complicated. They cannot sell directly to consumers. Domestic wineries can. So for international wineries to work like these guys to work on the platform, it gets really, really interesting, because they are not allowed, like wineries, to just put their wines on their website.
Okay.
And sell. It's more complicated that way.
Yeah, that is. That was one of the fascinating things when you approached me with the idea, was that connection directly to the winery. And I don't think I really realized that until you were like, no, there's nothing out there like it. And I think, myself included, people are skeptical when they hear that, like, surely someone's done that. It just seems obvious, right? And then I did the research, and I'm like, he's right. There's no. And then what I thought were, buying directly, or actually buying through a retailer. Or
it's like technically you are not buying directly, but because you have to have that retailer in the middle. But the retailer's not controlling anything. Right. The winery is just telling the retailer, please sell it for me. Yeah. So there's a big difference of trying to convince the retailer who's going to mark it up, a lot. Mm-hmm. Whereas, our system just, works a little bit differently.
So if I were to go, I don't want to name the name of this place, but a giant liquor store that looks like Sam's Club and it has a ton of wine. Do they get paid, to push certain wines, or how does that work? Do they prefer placement on shelves? Is there incentives like that make wine more attractive to the consumer that the consumer may not even be aware of?
Well, it is illegal for wineries to pay in certain ways to incentivize that way. Okay. But there are obviously in some stores the brands that make more sense for, let's say, for the retailer to push than others.
So that makes us, I think, BevLive as us more accessible, right? Because
it makes it independent.
Yeah,
it makes it completely independent, and I think that's the big difference. It's like there's no middle person in the way who is incentivized in one. Like I think that's where you're going with that.
Right.
Incentivized in one way or another.
Yeah, because I feel like maybe I don't know as much as you do about the industry, and I'm still learning a lot, but. It seems like, the smaller wineries can get squeezed out really quick because they don't have the money to get into the store and the market.
I think it's not necessarily that, but I think it's in general, you don't even get there. like you have these few distributors and you have to go through the distributors. That's kind of the funnel I was explaining earlier. It's kind of
so you may not get into the store at all. Because,
exactly.
Right.
You don't even get presented because you do not have that distribution. It's illegal for you to sell directly to the store. You have to go through regular distribution. Like California is one small. There's a difference there. I'm not going to get way too technical, but in general, you have to go through that distributor.
Right, and a lot of people don't know this, and in fact, I didn't until I looked it up, but there are like inventory minimums, right, to sell with some retailers. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, there's some, they have also like...
And that's a lot. It's not a little, if they're a small boutique winery, I feel like some of them might have trouble parting with that much product.
They may not even have that much product,
right, or
for that matter.
If they could afford to ship it to the retailer, for fulfillment, but... At BevLive, we don't do that.
And you got to have it in different warehouses across the country too. And then, with some of these guys. So
that's the other thing I love about BevLive in this concept. We don't have those rules. We
play by our own. Sign us a case, and you're ready to go. And
how hard is it?
Producer Carl Snow there will help us to get on the platform.
So how hard is it to onboard with us if you're a winery? What do they do?
You send us an email. You go on the website, fill out the contact form. We'll contact you back, and we'll get you set up.
It's super simple, right?
Super easy. So you don't need to convince anybody, like a retailer or a distributor. It's like let's get this set up. Then you send us pictures of the wines, maybe the labels, and all the descriptions, points, whatever you want to send us, and then you're good to go. And then you can tell all your friends, hey, my wine is ready on BevLive, and I'll be streaming live next week.
I know. I'm excited. So we do have some exciting news ourselves, don't we? We had an article air about BevLive today. So you want to talk about that?
We're super excited for all of you who are familiar, and hopefully some of you are watching.
Yeah, right.
We've been accepted to an accelerator called Generator, and we've already talked to some of amazing mentors there. And
absolutely.
And I think I think as an entrepreneur, it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people, and I think that's what we've been so impressed with.
I think.
Big shout out to Generator.
Yeah, right. I know. Hey, Generator. We've met some. We're only in the third week, right? So we've only, and really, it's not even the third week because the first week's just 2 days of programming and classwork, but. And to be fair, I've read a lot about these other accelerators, and I do feel like Generator, it does have that white glove kind of touch when it comes to mentorship, because some of these other ones, they throw you right in there in the fire, and you're pitching to investors from day one, and they expect a lot of these things, but not everybody's a seasoned serial entrepreneur either. That's why. I
think, like I said, big shout out to everybody there, our friends here in Huntsville, and of Generator in general, I guess. It's an awesome program, and we're super honored to be part of it. So,
and I love their mission too, because I feel like it's congruent, with ours. It goes with what we stand for too, and that's trying to develop. Generator, I feel like, tries to develop that talent in areas that weren't thought of. No one thinks of Huntsville, Alabama as a big booming tech bubble. Until exactly. Until they come here and they're like, oh, okay, this is what I pictured it.
I had that discussion today actually with Donna, who is leading our cohort here in Huntsville, and the discussion was about how, especially during the pandemic, people in like entrepreneurs figured out, and VCs as well, that you don't need to be in Silicon Valley. Yes, it's fantastic, and there's some great
people there. Especially for wine, I guess.
Close to the source. But also just in general, I think there's smart people everywhere. Like here in Huntsville, we are the #1 destination for engineers in the United States, right? So we have the second highest PhD percentage in the country. So there's some very, very smart people here, and I think that's why Generator is here, because there's, that's
it is, and it's amazing that kind of culture that. And for those who might not be, if you're tuning in, familiar with Huntsville, Alabama, there is a big tech scene here, but it's mostly Department of Defense, government contracting type stuff. So there isn't like a huge private sector, commercial sector for that. But that's changing because people like Generator come here. Right. They help these companies establish and kind of make that reputation, I think, for the city. That, hey, we're not just about government. We can do everything too. And I can speak from experience. When you kind of approached me with BevLive as this project, this new company that we would start, it was an exciting creative outlet for me too, because I mean, I love tech. I love doing everything software engineering, but it gets boring sitting, at the government desk, no windows. You can't have your phone in there. You're stuck in there all day, So it's a different experience for me too, where it's like, we're totally running as lean as possible. We're getting things done as quickly as we can. And so what advice, if there are any entrepreneurs listening in right now, what would you give, just starting out, just like us, maybe they haven't made it the accelerator yet, but they're applying for everyone they can. What advice do you have for them?
Put me on the spot, huh?
Yeah. Right. Tell the truth.
Like I said, surround yourself with smart people. And I think accelerators are a great thing to do that, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
I think most of these do have a scene that you can go to, or do have places where like-minded people hang out. So surround yourself with like-minded people. Ask as many questions as you can, especially if it's your first time.
Oh yeah.
And get yourself a good attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You set everything up. It's super, super
That's
important.
True.
Don't do things yourself. Y Combinator always says, once you get started, they always say, just put something out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we did.
So
it's
exactly.
We launched in June, and we put something out there that works and works well. It was actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's just just get started. Do something. If you have a dream, if you want to change your life and build something that excites you, just do it. But don't quit your job right away. Do it after the kids are in bed. Do it at 9 o'clock at night from 9 to midnight.
Right.
Or don't quit your job. But start slowly. Patience, step by step.
Yeah.
My dad always tells me you're on step by step, one step at a time.
Yeah. For sure.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
No, it wasn't.
And then then you scale. Once you have that, but that's where you get to, eventually you will get to that point where especially when you talk to investors, you got to scale. You got to show the growth. But find your product market fit too before that. So you make sure that people actually want what you want.
Know who you're trying to sell to and that they want what you want, because that's the hardest thing, I think, and we face it every day, is people don't know what they want until they see it, and then they're like, oh, how did I live without this? But
it's a typical kind of if Henry Ford asked what people want, they would have asked for more horses or something.
Sure,
they wouldn't have asked for a car. I know it sounds very cliche, but you need to understand your consumer, but you also need to find out what you believe the consumer wants. And the consumer will not always tell you, but you need to give them something and show it to them, and then they go like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So you need to try to understand your perfect persona, the perfect persona for your platform, and then give them something that you believe they want. And then they either like it or they don't. If they don't, then you adjust.
Right, yeah. But you don't know till you try. And I agree with, put something out there, because I think I've seen it happen. They get too hung up on the details.
Especially those engineers who have it just
perfect. Oh no, who are those people? Everything perfect and to a T. But you can get you can get lost in the weeds, can't see the forest through the trees kind of thing. And then you never get anything done, and then someone beats you to market. Because that's the thing, I think the important thing about startups people don't realize is there's a lot more competition out there than until you do the research, and you're like, okay, I thought my idea was original because a lot of startups I feel like are plagued with that, and then they get discouraged. But I would say don't get discouraged, because you might have a differentiator.
You might have something that they do not have.
Yeah, you might have that secret sauce, and maybe they're not doing as well as you think, but they're not a publicly traded company, so you don't have a way to track them. And you might be the one.
Especially when you talk to investors, make sure you understand your competition.
Yeah.
There's another thing. It's don't go into a meeting and then they tell you well, there's this other company that does exactly that, and they have 2,000 employees, and you go like,
what? Yeah.
Know your competition.
Exactly, and that's if you're a technical person like I am, here's a word of advice: make sure you get versed on those business kind of topics, because they will come up again and again and again. And I think you'll notice a pattern of the same questions being asked, and if you don't start answering them, then some doors will start to shut. But I think too, you kind of read in books, or you might see movies, and it's like I guess the stereotype of the venture capitalist investor you go pitch to. They're very mean. They're very, they'll just call it like Simon from American Idol or something, and they.
Well, Simon means well, though. I mean, it's so
right.
Even if you have a mean VC in front of you, they usually mean well.
Yeah, and I can't say we've ever encountered that, or even a mentor that's really done well. And some of them, I don't think we knew, exactly what they did until after the meeting, and they told us.
Well, I think that's serious. Like if somebody tells you, like a VC or whoever it might be, that something, you may want to look at something, or maybe you don't understand something. I think that's just helpful advice. I'd rather have that than somebody goes like, fantastic. Love it.
Yeah.
I think constructive criticism is just so important, because these people have been there, done that. They've seen a million deals come through, and they understand what works and what doesn't. So listen again.
That's yeah. And if you have to take. Everyone has an opinion, right? Everyone has certain biases. So don't let the bad piece of advice destroy you. It should be valuable, and I think you should test it and kind of in your own product and see if it makes sense. And maybe if you don't agree, and that's fine too. So just keep that in mind. Their advice is not your destiny, is what I'm trying to say. Well, we're coming to a close here, but is there one, I guess, last piece of advice you give, or just something fascinating that happened to you this week from the startup scene that you've never experienced or would never have thought of before?
Oh no, you're really putting me on. So why don't you go first?
Well, so yeah, I think really when it hit was we're kind of doing all the legal talk and all this stuff and trying to figure out all the finances and how things play. And we learn in school, like, it's like the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the PEMDAS, the order of operations when you're doing a math problem. And I feel like starting a business, especially a startup's very much the same way. There's a million things to do. It all has to be done now, or yesterday, even better. And you just don't know where to begin. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And then I realized it's just a formula. We have to figure out what's the most important thing for our business, and that's not going to be the same for everybody. And then you just start there, like start somewhere, because you don't know if it's not going to work till you try, and then you'll just build from there. So that's what I think this week's taught me, is just be patient and just come up with a plan, have a plan.
We're going full circle here, coming back to Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Have a plan.
Be patient, especially those of you who are out there who are like, having a dream and who are like 22 years old or something.
Yeah, and that's great too.
You have so much time to figure it out. You don't need to figure it out in 2 weeks 2 months or even 2 years or even 10 years.
Yeah.
You have time is on your side.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. I'm a former Army veteran, so one piece of advice I was given by a leader of mine in a kind of a combat situation, he told me one day, he said, just come up with a plan. Even if it's a bad plan, it's better than no plan. And that's probably the best piece of advice someone's ever given me. And I've heard it, in a different iterations ever since. And can't be more true of the business. Have a plan, and because at least you can evaluate if it's a good one or not. And if it's not, you can always change it.
You can always adjust it. But I think it's good to have a plan. And with that, I think we've covered a lot. So one thing I do want to mention for those wineries out there who are watching, what we're doing is unique. I think we're really trying to change something. We're trying to change an industry. We're trying to change how wine is sold in our industry. And I think the idea in many ways is that we are helping small wineries get to the consumer.
Sure.
We're giving an outlet to those who don't have an outlet. And I think we've seen this over the pandemic. It's like the small wineries, they didn't have any distribution. They had to shut their doors, so people could not come to the cellar door. And all of a sudden they had to adjust. And I think, for us, forward-thinking people, it's kind of like, okay, what do we need to put in place so that these wineries are taken care of? And I think that's where we come in. We bring that audience. We bring the content. We're going to have all kinds of different content. We bring the entertainment to people. And I think that's the solution I think that wineries have been craving for, especially over the last 2-3 years when it was tough. I think that's the solution that we're offering. So I think it's really changing in many ways, changing an industry. And I think that's coming back again. I'm sorry here, but that's what, as an entrepreneur, it's so exciting. If you have that opportunity, if you find something that can really have an impact on an industry, And on both, the people who are trying in our situation, the wineries trying to sell on the platform, but also for the consumer. So we're solving a problem that the wineries have, but also a problem that the consumer has.
Yeah.
So we're solving two problems on both sides, and that's why I think that's why I'm just ridiculously excited. Yeah.
So I think we'll do these every Thursday, right? 4 p.m. Pacific time. That's it. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. We're BevLive. I'm Brett.
I'm Bjorn.
That's Bjorn. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.